All right, y'all, what's going on? It's Combo Breaker 99. I'm back with another video. Okay, so just caught this recent interview with Holm. You know, she was giving her thoughts on the Katie Taylor Amanda Serrano fight. And basically, you know, she just said that, you know, it was a good fight. You know, she kind of broke it down and said, you know, it was a good back and forth action fight. You know, Amanda Serrano did some good work. She thought that Katie Taylor did kind of edge it out towards the end when she stepped on the gas. But it was a close fight. You know, she said it was a close fight. And, of course, you know, she was asked about would she want to return to boxing. And, of course, Holm said that if she did go back to boxing, the Katie Taylor fight is the fight that she would want. You know, she would come back to boxing, but it would have to be for that type of fight, you know, big fight like that. But I was just reading through this interview, couple of interviews, and, you know, she was just saying that, you know, she's one of those fighters that likes to really kind of go for goals, and it has to be something to kind of drive her, you know, basically saying like when she went from, you know, the boxing champion to MMA, you know, that was a goal that she wanted to do, you know, come to MMA, go to the UFC and become champion, and now try to make that transition back to boxing, but make it worth it, you know, and try to become champion again. Because she said, so many people have done like the transition and, you know, they either fail, like they either try to kind of pinball back and forth, go from boxing to MMA and vice versa and go back, right? So she was just saying that if she was to come back to boxing, that would be her ultimate goal, is to, you know, try to take on Katie Taylor, you know, for her belts at 135, because she's never fought at 135 in boxing, which is true. You know, Holm fought at 140. I think Mama said she was, definitely welterweight. She was a welterweight, junior welterweight, and I think she's even fought as high at 154. You know, because I used to follow her fights, you know, early in her career. And, you know, Holm, she was a unified champion at welterweight. But, yeah, she's never fought as low as 135. You know, she never fought down somewhere as low as 135. But what's crazy is, you know, when she came to the UFC, she fought at bantamweight, which, of course, for boxing fans, you know, bantamweight in MMA is 135. You know, bantamweight in boxing is like, what, 105 or something like that. It's a totally different thing. So in boxing, you know, she was at 147, 154, around those weights towards the end. But whenever she moved to MMA, she went down to 135. So going back to boxing, she actually could make that weight, and she could make it easy because, you know, she's been doing that throughout the majority of her career, right? So that would be easy for her. But this is what she said in this recent article. She said, you know, it's hard for me to think past. You know, I've got my own fight in MMA in front of me, and my eyes are still on the UFC gold. But I will say this. If I was to go back to boxing, that would be the fight I would want. And it does intrigue me a lot, to the point where before I was like, I'll never box again. I'm not saying that. And there's a lot of fans there's a lot of people that have tried to transition back and forth, and nobody's really been able to do it successfully. And that drives me. I want to show people I was able to come to MMA from boxing, but I can also go back, and it does get me excited. All right, so yeah, man, that makes sense though. Like she said, right now, she has a fight coming up against Ketlin Vieira. You know, she's got that fight coming up, but the only way to make the transition back to boxing is to try to take on the champion at 135, which is Katie Taylor, right? But, you know, that's not something like that's really set in the cards. But, you know, she said that is something she like to do. And I know she said she had talked about it before. Like, I think before she jumped into MMA, that is a fight that they had discussed, which is crazy. I didn't even know that. But she said, so my goals right now are on the fight in front of me and with MMA and all that. But I always say there has to be like a short-term and long-term goal, you know, dreams that you see right away and the dreams that you see that you have to live for today, but you still have to dream for what you want for the future, or else you'll never get anything done, right? You have to be working towards something. So I'm like, yeah, I live for today. I'm in my training camp right now from May 21st, but that doesn't mean that I don't think about like, wow, that would be great, you know, that would be something to pursue. All right, so yeah, she's thinking about it. Of course, that's kind of how Holm is. Like, for somebody that's like 40 years old, she's still kind of pushing it and still kind of looking at these goals, you know, like what else to do, you know, and she's still trying to go for that belt. You know, she's still trying to go for that belt. Many people that don't feel like she needs to try to challenge for the bantamweight championship again in the UFC, she's still trying to go for it. So I got to give her a lot of credit there and a lot of respect. But my thoughts on the Katie Taylor fight, I think that's something doable, though. I think it is, you know, not just for money, but just for, you know, women's boxing and, you know, the sport of MMA. You know, I think it'll bring a lot of casual fans and a lot of Holm fans from MMA back to boxing. You know, they'll follow her. You know, they'll pay to see this fight. I think they will, you know. And I think it's something that's needed right now to keep it going. We had Taylor Serrano. We're going to have Shields versus Marshall. We might have Alicia Baumgartner and Michaela Mayer coming up soon. That's a big fight. That's a big fight with potential. Now we got a potential Holly Holm, Katie Taylor, if we could get that. But first off, we might have a Taylor Serrano rematch. You never know, right? We might get that first, and then Holly Holm, once she does try to challenge for the belt, if she doesn't get it, or if she does get it, she might call out Katie Taylor, and be riding hard for win. And you should say, hey, I want to go back to boxing and fight Katie Taylor or something like that, right? So that could happen. And in my thoughts, I think it could work. I would have to say Holly Holm has a good chance, because for one, Holly Holm has a lot of experience. I know it's been forever since she's boxed. Her last fight was back in 2013. She's been gone from boxing for about 9 years now, right? But boxing is second nature to her. That was her one love next to kickboxing. She was doing it for years and years, and that's the style that she kind of brought into MMA. Her kickboxing and just her boxing fundamentals. She was still bringing that type of style in to the sport of MMA. So it wouldn't be hard for her to kind of revert back to that. I mean, you might have some trouble trying to control yourself from taking somebody down and maybe trying to score a head kick, right? But I think overall, once she laces those gloves up, and goes back to the old boxing shoes and everything, I think she'll feel just right. So I think it would be good for her. I think that would be a good transition for her. It's not as dangerous. Honestly, I know there's more deaths in boxing, and we did have a woman boxer die like a year or so ago now in the ring. I think in like the first round. Can't remember her name off top, but I think for Holly Holm and Katie Taylor, neither one of these are like big dangerous punchers. You know what I mean? So I think it's a good fight for her, where she could just go in there and not have to worry about the brutality of somebody like, Amanda Nunes or Juliana Pena, or even like Ketlin Berry, who she's fighting, pretty soon. That's a big fighter, big dangerous fighter. She has to worry about being taken down or being head kicked. So when you're dealing with somebody like Katie Taylor, who's a little bit smaller, not as strong, I think that's a doable fight for her. Holly Holm is like 3 inches taller. Holly Holm's like 5'8". Katie Taylor's like 5'5", like 5'5", 5'6". So she's dealing with a smaller fighter, one that doesn't punch too hard. Holly Holm at 135 is very strong. Holly Holm is very physically strong. She's quick still. And again, bringing those boxing fundamentals in, it could be a very interesting fight. Now, am I saying she's going to win this fight? She could, but Katie Taylor still has a great chance in this fight because, she's been doing boxing, more consistently over the past few years, right? It's been 9 years since Holly Holm's fought, and of course the game's evolved. I got to say that when I look at Katie Taylor, she still does some, more. I'd say she does a little. She's a little bit more fancy in some ways than how Holly Holm used to fight before. Just a few different ways, but there's still a lot of things that I think Holly Holm could go in there and expose, because Katie Taylor does get hit. Katie Taylor does get hit, but I mean, there's just some fancy things like with her feet that she does, but Holly Holm shouldn't have any trouble, trying to figure that out, So, my final thoughts real quick. Like I said, I just wanted to do a quick video on this one. I think Holly Holm could do it. Again, I think it would be a safer choice for her somewhere down the line, like she's 40 now. If the fight doesn't come along until like 40, when she's 41, or, right before she's about to hit 41, it's not really a fight I'd say I'm worried about her going in there and having trouble with. Because again, she's fought those 3 5-minute rounds, she's gone the distance with like Chris Cyborg. She's been in there with big fighters like Megan Anderson, Valentina Shevchenko, very physically strong fighters, for like 5-minute rounds, And what is women's boxing? It's 2-minute rounds. It's like 10 2-minute rounds, not even 12, so, and not 3-minute rounds like the men's fights, that's 2-minute rounds. So that's probably going to be like a, step on the brake a little bit, for, letting the foot off the gas and just kind of saying, oh, okay, I remember this. I can do this, right? So all she has to do is work for 2-minute rounds. And, Holly Holm is that type of fighter, likes to throw those flurries and move around and, use her athleticism. So she might actually have fun in it, and I think she could pull it off. She might try to go in there and try to stop Katie Taylor, especially after looking at that fight. She said it kind of amped her up. She is a southpaw. Her being the bigger, stronger fighter at 3 inches taller and just all around, physically strong, she might put the pressure and make Katie Taylor have to really, really fight and hold on for dear life in the fight. You never know, right? Because again, fighting in MMA, first going from boxing, kickboxing early in your career for like years and years, over a decade, then going to the world of MMA for almost a decade, and grabbing that belt and fighting those brutal fighters, you know, that's probably giving her another level of confidence. And then coming back and saying, man, I ate the biggest head kicks. I've been slammed. I've been, you know, beaten up by Chris Cyborg. What do you have to offer for me besides your boxing skill? You know what I mean? I've been there. So I kind of see it like that for Holly Holm going into this fight. So she has a lot of dog. Katie Taylor, of course, you know, has the experience, consistent experience over the past, you know, years, like I said. So it could be up in the air, but I think it would be a competitive fight. I would check it out as a boxing fan and MMA fan. But let me know, guys, what y'all think. Would y'all check that fight out? Holly Holm versus Katie Taylor. Combo Breaker 99. I'm out. Subscribe. Peace.